And so
Okay,
my name
cool.
is Zac Montgomery with War on Retail, or I'm the founder of War on Retail. I've been in liquidation for over 15 years. This podcast is Built by Liquidation. We're a liquidation we're a reseller podcast geared towards teaching people about liquidation and beyond. Today we've got Jason Padovani with Smart Source Wholesale. And the theme of the day is buyer transparency, what buyers think they're getting and what we sell them as brokers. So that's kind of what I want to get into is what, as a buyer, I have an expectation of a truck. You as a broker are explaining the truck, and it's somewhere along the way, there's a disconnect. How do
Right.
I fix that? As a buyer, and we'll just jump into Dollar General. How should I set my expectation as a buyer versus you, the broker, what you're telling me? A lot of times I think buyers hear one thing, even though you tell them
Mhm.
another, and they get the truck in and now they're immediately upset with you. How can we stop that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it does go back to the way to avoid that is setting the proper expectation. And that's literally something we drill down so hard on all of our loads. Specifically, since we're talking about, you brought up Dollar General. That's a great one to start with just because of the seasonality in Dollar General and the pricing structure that they utilize. And I think that, and I literally say the same thing to every customer probably about 20 different times a day with there's a reason that when they go with that lower price point that there's going to be more seasonal. That's like their way of, some type of concession, if you will, in my opinion, right? So out of the 17 different Dollar General facilities that we've been managing and working with now with customers, uh, we literally, I don't know, probably 40, 50, 60 loads in the last 20, 30 days, maybe less. I mean, give or take. But the point is we haven't had literally, I can't even remember a customer that was like upset with us because we literally worked so hard on setting an expectation. So
Yeah.
when all customers ask a super similar question is it going to be heavy and seasonal? They are asking these questions. And that's the opportunity to set the expectation. So
Yeah.
we're saying, listen, typically around the months of November to say Mayish, it's going to be that lowered price point you see of 3,500, 45, maybe even a little bit north of 45. And then it creeps maybe in June or July back up to the 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way back until it circles around again, say in the next October. So it's safe to say it's roughly like a 6-month cycle, and when you have that lowered price versus the higher price. But again, with that lower price comes, yes, you could get summer, you could get Christmas, you could get Halloween, you could get Valentine's. And we say seasonal, but then to take it a step further, it's going to be, we've had customers that got summer and Christmas together, Christmas and Valentine's. And we don't know, no one knows unless you bring that load in. And that's one point that we try to drive home is that unless that load is brought in somewhere, that is the only way you could guarantee anything about that load, anything. Other than that, that's why setting the expectation is so important. Saying, listen, it could be 70 to 95% seasonal, period. And that's it. And then we'll have customers say, well, do you think I'll get at least 20% non-seasonal? And then you really got to watch those types of questions just because you just circle back on setting expectation
Yep.
again and say, listen, here's how it is. Like, I don't want to tell you what you want to hear. I know that's what you want. This is how the load is. And literally, we have not had one issue. I've been but one upset customer of Dollar General. And it's
Yeah.
because I'm so redundant in the facts that I put on the table for them. But I also try to provide strategy at the same time, saying, listen, with a lot of customers that buy these, the strategy play is to pull out what you can and use now. There's
Yeah.
probably going to be something, right? Use it for now, and then you're going to store it for later. That's the win on these,
Yeah.
right? So not all people can do that, and I get that, but that's where you can make a win because I want to get the rhetoric of, oh, they're bad now because they're seasonal. Well, no, you is there an opportunity? How is there an opportunity? And how do you execute that opportunity? And that's my one of the suggestions that I just gave is pulling out what you can use now and storing the rest for later. But that's an explanation we give a lot. But I like to get away from the rhetoric I see online and I hear people talk about like, well, stay away from Dollar General. They're heavy and seasonal. Like, yes, but that's not bad for everybody. That could be a turnoff to some,
Yeah.
but it's not a turnoff to all.
Well, I think that's a good point. And I think, I have a note here and it's almost a question, but you've already answered it. And the question was, what do most new buyers misunderstand about liquidation? And I think you nailed it without meaning to. I think a lot of new buyers are under the assumption that liquidation works for them. And in reality, we need to work with liquidation. So if you're going to buy these lower cost loads, especially Dollar General, you have to be willing to get creative on how you get rid of it. And if it's not, if you only have the space to move product that's ready to sell now, I don't think Dollar General is for you, because you will have to store some of that summer stuff or that Christmas stuff or that Halloween stuff to get the recovery you want out of it. If you're just looking for something, for what it's Dollar General now, 3,500 to 4 grand.
Yeah,
Um,
correct.
do you think you can? I mean, it's you can't even answer that question, right? Because that's the buyer. This is me being a buyer, right? The buyer goes, "Do you think I can still make money off the stuff that's not seasonal?" Right? And you can't answer that because you don't know what's going to be on the truck. And a buyer's not willing usually to say, "Hey, I'll give you an extra $1,000 to bring it into your place and look at it for me." They want it shipped raw and direct. And I know a lot of the issues that we had was people always want it raw and direct until they get it raw and direct, and it's not
Indirect.
great or it's just not good.
Right.
And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, you wanted it raw and
Yeah.
direct. I'm making $300 off you. I gave it to you, gave you what you're asking for, and then now you're upset with me because it was raw and direct and it wasn't what you were hoping for.
Right. Yeah. I
So
I totally understand what you're saying there.
no, I think especially in the lower
Yeah.
cost loads, if if that's what your budget is, you have to be willing to do the work and get creative. And I don't think it's unrealistic to think, retail buyers would buy Halloween in March or May or April, whatever month we're in now. If you package it right and you get creative, I think at any point during the year, you can sell all of the seasonal stuff. You just have to be willing. I think that's a misunderstanding. They think it's going to be easy every time. And they get a little pushback when it's not super simple. They don't have all, this season stuff in here. We're getting rid of stuff Dollar General does not want anymore. And that's the thing people got to realize, or any retailer, we're getting rid of the unwanted goods. And so it's not always going to be super, super easy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's when the strategy is definitely, especially with these lower cost loads. I think sometimes the biggest point to drive home is that it is low. There's a reason that it's usually lower cost, right? And we need to make sure. I mean, for lack of a better term, I think sometimes people think that it's just a good deal, which would be nice, but it's usually not the case. Like,
Right.
Dollar General's not pumping out 95% non-seasonal at 3,500,
Yeah.
and that's, so, but yeah, for sure.
You need to use a little bit of comments, even without like the disclaimer of seasonal. I think it's important to use a little bit of common sense when you see trucks on the market below value. Why is that? Ask yourself that,
Right.
and then ask your broker. And that's something that we're talking to a lot of people about, is just, it's, if you talk to a broker and their sales tactic is the loads have been great, no complaints so far, it's probably time to try someone else. I tell people, find us an educator and not just a broker, because an educator will sit there and explain to you the risks involved in the load, and they'll tell you if the load's going to work for you, for better or worse. There's some loads people might call you. How many times do you think someone calls you for a Dollar General, but then you end up selling them something else because the Dollar General doesn't fit
It,
their
yeah, it can happen. I mean, that's why there's always every phone call is a discovery call. Even a customer who, it doesn't matter if they're a new customer, a current customer, whatever it is, it always turns into a discovery call because it may be, you know what, maybe we're finding out this isn't right for you, but we just had one of these the other day. FC is super tight right now, and I said, the customer brought up something else, and I said, okay, well then let's look at that instead because that may work for you. So it is. I mean, every call can turn into a discovery call. It doesn't matter if it's a new customer or someone that's bought from you 30, 40, 50 times. But yeah.
I know you're moving a lot of the Dollar General. I know you're at wholesale week up there right now. What are you pushing? What's your main? I know you got your Target. We got Target GM. We have Target high piece count stuff.
Mm.
We've got. I know you're still pushing the Amazon stuff out of Texas. Is that right?
It is, yeah. So I'd say like right now, this is something I'm going to talk about something right now that we haven't really publicly talked about at all. Something that we're going to push a little bit at the conference this week. But we've been doing a lot of mixed loads where we've been offering customers almost like an a la carte option where out of Florida, we can do toy, electronic, food, LPN, FC, a little bit of essentials, but essentials are kind of light right now. But the point is that mixed category. And, I know I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. And I know I'm, not the first person to do that, but it's been working well for customers. And they like knowing, they're like, oh, well, give me two food, two FC, three LPN, one electronics, and they like that. They like knowing what they're going to get.
Yeah.
So that's a big priority. Is we're going to keep pushing that. It's been successful, and showing it to them before they buy, which has been another big thing that we try to do whenever possible. Not always possible. We always try to do that. But yeah, I mean, out of Texas and now out of Alabama, we are doing, I don't think they're a true 48. I think the box is about 43, 44 inches that we're doing, either an LPN, an FC, or an LP and FC blend,
Yeah.
with good liquidation. So definitely a good opportunity. And they don't have food or clothing, which a lot of customers prefer these days.
Yeah.
And then we have customers that do like food and clothing. So that works out. So we can just do food or we can do clothing loads at the same time. So I would just say I don't want to say I'm solely focused on unique situations, but unique buys is where, we want to say, listen, here's something a little bit different that you're not seeing a million times on the internet every week. And we push a lot of common stuff. We do. But I'm also focused on unique buys, like the a la carte we just talked about, or like, the blends, the LP and FC blends. Trying to think of some other things we got coming down the pike. We do a decent amount of food lately. I mean, food's not that
A lot of food on the
crazy
market.
original, but yeah, I mean, it's been good. So just things like that. But and I would say, just again, everybody's really big on, as time passes, like we mentioned again, just knowing what they're getting. And really, we hear from a lot from customers like, well, I tried this and this doesn't work. I tried this and this doesn't work. And it's really digging in. And like you said, you don't want to buy from a salesman. You want to buy from an educator. And I couldn't agree more with that. If I could like that statement 1,000 times, I would, because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much truth to that. So it is super important that we dig in and we ask those questions so that they know what they're getting, and then that prevents an upset customer when it comes down to it.
For sure. What do you think, um, if a customer had to ask a question to vet a supplier, this towards you or anybody else, what do you think? I mean, I'd say top question, but probably top three questions. I'm a new customer. I just got into the industry. I have my retail. I'm set. I just need my product. What top three questions would you suggest somebody ask a broker, you or anybody else, to vet them properly? Whether that, we're worried about scammers on the market. A lot of people just
Hmm.
straight up running away with the cash, which is what I consider a scam. And then I'll ask another question here in a second that I just came up with off the top of my head. But top three questions to vet a supplier to feel comfortable knowing this person's legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, I think every customer has a right to know, one, do you have this product sitting? And I mean, that's a pretty straightforward question. There's not a whole lot that branches out with that question. That, are you selling this? I think it's a question. I mean, it's a question not we get. I think it should be asked more often, and
Yeah,
saying, is this? They don't want something like, well, we don't want something that's brokered 10 times. I mean, of course. Like,
for
so that,
sure.
I think that's a good question to ask. Do you have this product? Have you seen this product? Do you use this product? What success, or what are the pros and cons? Because I think it's, you know by you either having possession or not having possession, you can answer those questions. I mean, that's like the basis of wholesale. If you don't know anything about it, then that kind of crashes
There's a lot
things
of
right
guys in the
there.
market that
Right.
have never laid eyes, because I mean, to broker
Right.
something, theoretically, there's no barrier to entry. If you know someone with product and you know a customer who needs product, you can broker a deal. The issue that, I run into with people is it's guys who've never laid eyes on the product at all. I don't care if you're direct
Mhm.
shipping it, but if you've never bought a Dollar General truck and you've never processed one yourself, or an Amazon truck or whatever, how are you gonna accurately sell that to somebody else if you don't know the work
Right.
involved? So
Right.
you're kind of like, it being on the floor is a huge selling point. Obviously, it doesn't have to be on the floor to be a legitimate deal. I think there's a huge value to brokers, whether it's, you're buying in such volume to get your costs down, which it used to be a thing. I don't know if it's still a thing now, but it used to be we bought blocks of Lowe's or blocks of Dollar General, and by buying blocks of 10, 20 trucks, we got our costs down, 500 to $1,000 a truck, and that's where our margin was made. Was on the buying power. Um,
Right.
and then there's connections that you have that I don't have as a broker. You've developed people and relationships, and there's sometimes you get the cream of the crop before the market does, because you move so much volume for your supplier. So there's a huge value to brokers. Um, It's just gets customers asking the right questions. I don't wanna say they're gotcha questions, right? But you mentioned your Gaylords out of Alabama, right? The
Mhm.
4-foot Gaylord is no longer a 4-foot Gaylord anymore, right? And that's not you, but that's
Right.
industry wide, and, it sounds like you're at the very least saying, "Hey, my 4-footers are 43 inches," which a lot of times I feel like you have to drag that out of a broker. You have to specifically say, "How tall are the Gaylords?" And now you gotta ask, "How thick are the Gaylords?" And then you also have to ask, "Are they square or are they octagons?"
Right.
Right? And so these are the kind of questions I think people need to know. You don't think to ask. Someone that says, "Hey, I got 4-footers on my floor," most buyers don't ask that question, and I think they should. As a broker, it's like when you have an octagon, it's not as popular as a square, and so you're less likely to
Right.
like proffer that information. So the buyer has to know, you know, what's the quantity of food, what's the quantity, what's the percentage of food, what's the percentage of clothing, that kind of stuff. They should be asking on Amazon trucks. When you do an FC, this is a question that there's some debate on, some people that I've talked to. So you have your processed Amazon LPN blend, right?
Mhm. Correct.
When you sell it, what's the percentage of LPN to FC?
I'd say 70. We strive for like 70/30, 70%
How many how
FC.
many pieces are in a
Yeah.
pallet? Roughly.
I'd say about, uh 220,
Okay,
I'd say is a number we strive for pretty much. And that's another, I mean, you talk about the 3 questions, not to get off track there, but it would be piece count would be in that question.
for sure.
You know what I mean? Do you have it? Is it your product? Where's it sitting? And then also then you get into the nitty-gritty of, like you just said, piece count, pallet height, and
Yep.
then I mean, there's not a whole lot else to talk about, just being transparent. But yeah, go ahead with what else
No,
you were
so
saying.
when you say 70/30, LPNFC, we have 220 pieces in the let's do 200 just to keep the
Mhm.
numbers round.
Sure.
Um, 70/30, so you're saying there's roughly 140 pieces of FC, 60 pieces of LPN when you do the math that way at 200 pieces, obviously a little bit
Uh,
more.
Roughly, yeah, correct.
Okay. So I've talked to some people. I mean, we haven't had anybody like that on the podcast, but some guys go, "Well, I had a debate for a minute. It was 50-50, but then the customer got it and it was a similar build to yours." And they go, "No, no,
Mhm.
no. Volume is 50-50. There's 50% of the pallet is FC and then 50% of the pallet is LPN." I'm like, "Th-
Yeah.
that's not correct, right? Because when I go to
Right.
sell it, I need to know how much LPN I've got in my pallet versus how much FC I've got in my pallet." Um,
Right.
how often do you think buyers actually corroborate is a terrible word for that, check their piece count? So you tell me there's 200 pieces in a pallet across the load. Now, that's an average. I'm never going to hold you to it, right? Like
Mhm.
I always tell people, give me a little bit of a variance because there's bigger pieces in the pallet. But over the course of the load, we're saying there's 24 pallets. That should be right at 5,000 pieces. How many times do you think a buyer actually checks that, or just assumes the broker is telling them the right number?
I would say that it depends on the buyer. When there's a buyer that's more experienced, they can, I don't want to say eyeball it, but they have an eye to see it a little quicker than others, and they check it to like an extent. And then like sometimes with newer buyers, they'll more take your word for it until I think there's evolution of a buyer when they're new, and then they start to be like, okay, well, let me understand this a little bit more. And then they start to look at it a little harder. And that would be my opinion. So I'd
Yeah.
say, again, it's my opinion. I'm not saying it's fact, but I'd say newer buyers are checking less. And then more experienced buyers, they're checking more. But because they're experienced, they don't have to look too hard. They kind of already can see things
They
with a
can
good
tell when
eye.
it's
Yeah,
when
for
Doc
sure.
goes up. I
Right.
mean, my point is, like, it's so important. I think a lot of people assume their price per unit when it comes to the bin store model.
Right.
You know, listen, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it didn't matter. Stuff was so cheap, you just dumped it in the bin. Your LPN was less than a dollar.
Mm,
I'm talking to someone, last week, and he mentioned that he was charging a lady $3 per unit on LPN. I was like, "Man, that seems high." And he's, "No, well, do the
yeah.
math. On a 5-foot Gaylord of straight LPN, it's 350, about 350 pieces. You're paying about $1,000 a Gaylord, give or take. It came out to $3 a piece." I don't think that people always do that math and are confirming how much they have in each piece for their bin store. I mean, that dictates, your what day you should start on, $12, $8, whatever. Um, but piece count matters. I mean, it's a weird industry. We charge a flat rate per pallet. You know what I'm saying? Not a flat rate
Right.
per piece. Whereas I think most every other industry out there, if I'm going to buy a Stanley cup, I'm going to pay a price per unit on those cups. Whereas
Right.
liquidation, we're all just kind of chill with, oh, LPN's $400 for a 4-footer, not
Right.
really knowing I mean, unless it's manifested, but we're not, it's just something that's just been on my mind lately ever since I heard that price per unit on LPN. It's just an odd industry. We're all just kind of cool with going, okay, well, I'm paying this much for 5-footers. That's what people, when they call me up, they go, I need some LPN, I need some 5-foot LPN. And you tell them, your price is $800 a pallet. They go, sold. Okay, I didn't tell you anything else. I didn't tell you,
Right.
you didn't ask anything else. You just cared about your price per pallet. And I think that's a problem. Um, that,
It's a huge problem. Yeah, it's a huge problem. You need to make that piece count. I mean, there's been instances when, they've come out less, or sometimes they come out more, which obviously more isn't the issue, but it is. I mean, and y- I think everybody goes through the growing pains of that, but that's a super important question. Even when customers don't bring it up, um, we bring it up because, again, that goes back to setting the expectation. Like, you got to know. A lot of customers do ask piece count because it's an obvious question. Um, Maybe not so obvious as it should be, but it is an obvious question. But that's super basic. You gotta sell the piece count for
Well, it goes
sure.
back to you're in a unique spot. I know you work really closely with the guys that process your Amazon, your FCLPN. So
Mhm.
you probably have an updated you're on the ground a little bit more than most brokers are. I feel like from your posts and from everything I know about you, you're a little bit more on the ground looking at the product. Whereas a lot of guys, this is another common industry thing. You call me up, hey, I got 10 loads to move. Well, how many pieces per pallet? You tell me
Mhm.
250, right? And a lot of brokers go, okay, well, I can probably say 275. That sounds a lot better. I'm not going to get in trouble with it, right? But you sold it to me, and then I brokered it at 275. I increased it a little bit, right? Not too much where I should get in trouble, but a little bit. The problem comes when that load gets 3 times brokered, and then 4 times brokered, then 5 times brokered. Then every broker added a little bit of a smidge of a lie to it. You know what I'm saying? Just to make it sound a
Right.
little bit better. That 70-30, 60-40 sounds better to me, right? Like, it's not that far off because most people don't call you out and check on it, which is
Mhm.
another reason, it's really important to find a good educated broker, but also, like, you wanna find the guy who's I won't say closest to the source. You don't the Finding the source isn't, always, like, the biggest thing, but a lot of these brokers, to get the sale done, right, little lies just add up to where the end consumer ends up taking the hit because, if I lie a little bit, then you lie a little bit, then he lies a little bit, down the road, it adds up a lot.
It does, and I mean, like, it I understand what you're saying. I don't partake in that just
Oh,
because
no, and I'm not
it's
saying
at
at
the end.
all,
Right,
but
right, right, right. Yeah,
we talked about a few, 3 and 4
sure.
times broker,
Yeah.
the dangers of that because,
Oh, it's
you
yeah,
know,
it's terrible.
a
I
lot of
mean,
times the guy and sometimes, I mean, to be honest, listen, the guy 3rd down the road didn't realize that, there was a lie, and then he looks like
Right.
an idiot. So, it's just really important to know your broker and then to verify. Trust but verify is, it's a fair thing to do. There's nothing that says I shouldn't count every 3rd or 4th truck, at least 20% of my product. It's my due diligence as a buyer. If I'm not doing that, and I'm just trusting Zach, trusting Jason to tell me the right stuff, and I never check down the road, and then my business isn't making any money, I can't really blame Jason and
Right.
Zach. Jason might 220. It's been 220 for 2 years, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
like, we went through a heavier LPN period. Now it's 170. Well, if no one tells the broker, Zach or Jason, a lot of times we really heavily rely on customer feedback in order to go back to our supplier and say, "Hey, listen, we've been selling this. We sold some Target a few months ago, and we got asked to push it. We pushed it based on these are the parameters we pushed it on. There's this much clothing, there's this much soft lines, this much of whatever. Customers were getting it, giving us pushback and saying, no, no, no. What we're seeing is twice the amount of clothing or twice the amount of soft goods. And so without that feedback, we can't go back to our supplier and get it fixed and then advertise it
Right.
correctly. So, it's important as a buyer, I think, to give your suppliers feedback in a constructive form. I think, this is a question maybe you can answer, maybe some feedback you have. How many times have you gotten a call, truck's on the way? truck delivers at 10 a.m. You have a call by 10:05 and they're going, "This truck is garbage. It's dog shit. Everything's broken." And I'm going, "You unloaded that really quickly and you processed it with some speed I've never seen before. If you could go through all 26 pallets and tell me it's all broken, like send me your staff because I need some people that work like that." How often it doesn't sound like it happens very often now because you're doing a really good job of preventing that, but
Mhm.
it has happened to you. There's no way it hasn't selling. I think you said you sold 2,000 trucks last year. Zero chance
Sure.
you didn't have any of that experience last year.
Yeah, sure.
Some truck, talk about that, how frustrating that is for a broker to get that phone call, knowing if you just unloaded the truck and you went through some of it, it isn't always as bad as the first 2 pallets off the truck.
Yeah, it rarely ever is the whole load, if there's an issue, the whole load like that. It is tough. And things are always going to happen. And it's, like you say, people are naive to think that it wouldn't happen. It's going to happen, especially when you're moving volume. But yeah, I mean, it's sometimes customers could be quick to jump to conclusions. You know, sometimes qualities can change from load to load and things like that can happen. I would say, I don't know, if I had to take a wild guess, in 2025, less than 4 times. I
Yeah.
mean, and I honestly mean that, and that's a pretty realistic number. Which I think out of what does that mean? I'm like 98% effective. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So at the end of the day, yes, it's tough. We'll take a load back. We'll replace it. We'll give pallet credits or something like that. But um, and that's all I mean, that's all that happens from it then. It's either they could go a couple ways. If someone opens a truck, they're like, it doesn't look good, all this. It could either go with, okay, I went through it and it's not as bad as the first couple of pallets or something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, pretty much end the conversation. They're happy. They might have just been upset with like a pallet or two or something.
Yeah.
But there could be instances where, the a good portion of the truck couldn't be up to their expectation. And then you have to go down the road and say, okay, we'll send you some free pallets, or you could send it back and we'll send you one that, maybe this one just came out lower quality, which could be possible. It's not, obviously in this industry. But again, that would be, I don't want to stray from the question you just asked me.
Yeah.
But the
How do you
way that,
combat that a little bit? Just to pause you
how
while you answer.
sure.
How do you combat the customer who has the expectation of, "Okay, pallet is bad, I deserve a credit, or I deserve a
Okay.
replacement," because not it's not to be fair, I mean, when I first got into the business, that wasn't even a thing.
Mm,
You get a bad truck, you took it on the
right.
chin, you moved on. This is liquidation.
Right.
We buying and selling liquidated goods, but today's expectation is, "Oh, I'm not happy. I need a credit. $200, $500, $1,000 credit because those 2 pallets were shitty." Now there's some trucks where no pallet should be shitty because they're a processed, it's a processed load and this is the expectation. But when it's raw and direct, how do you set that expectation where they don't come back to you every single time going, "Oh, hey, Jason, last time, this pallet wasn't good and you gave me a fresh one."
Right.
How do you combat that where you set their expectations so well, it sounds like, but then I hear you say, you'll offer that credit. And I'm just curious, as because we were in the same business,
Sure.
how do you protect yourself against that? Because I know your margins. Like the margins on this stuff, they
Sure.
aren't that great. People think we're making, buku bucks on every truck when you're not. So how do you protect yourself in that situation?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a big, I would say that's a gray area of, uh, and I use this example a lot. If we have a certain load program and we sell to customer A that is happy with it, and I know we send, obviously it's not the exact same load to customer B, and say one's upset and one's not. So the first question I ask myself is, I say, okay, why is it that this customer, it worked for this customer, and then it's an issue, some type of issue with this customer? That's a really base question that
Sure.
I need to ask first. And then you need to dig into it and say, okay, was it a quality issue? Was it a misexpectation issue? And then how can we fix it? Like, what is the resolution? Because it's not always like you said. I get it. Back in the day, and we talk about that too. There was more chin taking of, just you don't get anything, and you were just taking it, and you'd figure it out, whatever. At the same time, I don't want. It's a line between making sure the customer knows that we're there to help out, without, how much risk do we mitigate then is the gray area. Because if you're mitigating all the risk, well, then there is no risk,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like it's a gray area of saying, what is going to help you out or how can we resolve this, but with also setting the expectation of this can be possible and you need to take on or you need to realize a certain amount of risk yourself.
Yep.
So it's a constant. There is no set answer to that. I think every situation is its own examination, and we just need to say, okay, what was wrong? What was the expectation? Why was the expectation not met? What can we do to help out? What is reasonable? What is a compromise?
Yep.
Keyword compromise that we can do. And it doesn't mean this, we shouldn't be doing this on every load because the load should come out meeting both of our expectations, right? So, every situation is different. I would just say sometimes, you just got to look at it. And sometimes it's a couple pallets. I think, again, this sounds like a crazy statistic, but I think maybe twice last year we
Yeah.
took back a load and sent another. But I mean, like, these are super rare instances. But when they do happen, sure, it wasn't good. Okay, we'll bring it back to Texas, bring it back to Florida, wherever, and then we'll either send you something else out, and that goes a long way with the customer. And
Huge. The
it's
fact that you're
I
one
don't
of
want them to.
massive.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm not. Listen, I want to build a stable business myself, and I'm not going to build a stable business by having unstable customers. So that's just not how it works. So if I need to help out or something happens and we need to contribute and say, okay, we'll give you a credit, we'll give you a couple of pallets, we can replace the load, we can help out this way. Or I have this other deal that I know we talked about and you're potentially interested in. And guess what? I'll sell it maybe 1,000 or two below cost. We can go that direction.
Yeah.
I just think businesses need to work with other businesses to come to a conclusion that makes sense. And I would say 98% of our customer base, if an issue were to happen, there's a lot of reason and rational conversation that takes place. And they
Yeah.
know that I don't feel personally that our customers are out to um grind us and try to get what they can out of us. I feel
Yeah.
that when issues happen that they are sincere issues that can be rectified.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't feel like we've ever been taken advantage of. Maybe, you know, a few times here or there, but I'd say it's super rare. We take our customers displeasure seriously, and then we work on them as a team with the customer without feeling like we're being grinded. And you got to help out while creating that mitigated risk expectation.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation and there is no set answer.
Yeah.
But
No, and that's fair. I think
yeah.
you said compromise, and that's a huge word when it comes down to it, because well, I think we're the same boat. I don't think the majority of the loads that we've sold that we had an issue on were necessarily because the quality of the load was poor. Or
Mhm.
the items or the whatever. I think it came down to communication between us and the buyer, and that's what the kind of the theme of the conversation is where did we go wrong in explaining it, and where did you go wrong in hearing what I was explaining? And 9 times out of
Sure.
10, when those few issues would come up, that's where the issue was. The issue wasn't usually in the quality of the goods. We explained the quality of the goods. It's returns,
Right.
it's grade A, whatever, grade B. You got what you paid for. Maybe I didn't explain that well enough to you. Maybe we sold you C grade product, and for whatever reason, I didn't explain well enough what C grade product would deliver like, because you're used to everything being in a box and this came all unboxed. Or maybe you didn't hear me correctly and your expectation was here and I didn't do a very good job of setting it where it should be here. And I think that's,
Sure.
the compromise in those situations. You're not always going to get the outcome you expected as a buyer, because it was a miscommunication between everybody. And I think buyers, when you see people get blasted on Facebook, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves, you got to come to a resolution with your broker also that works for everybody. And a lot of times, nobody's going to be happy with how it got resolved. Like it
Hmm.
got resolved. I wanted Jason to take the whole load back, and Jason goes, "You know what? No, this isn't all my fault. The load's not all bad. 5 pallets will suffice." Jason's probably like, "I really should have gotten, 2 pallets would have been should have made you happy." The buyer's like, "Nah, I want a whole load." But you got to compromise to keep those relationships, intact that way, because you don't want to burn a supplier by being that paying buyer that's unhappy with anything you can do. And you don't want to be the asshole broker who's not willing to do anything either. Because there are some genuine
Right.
times, like you said, where it's rare. This is my one of my last few questions or last few spots to talk about. Your record as far as it sounds like for complaints is, Jason 99 and complaints are 1, which is really unheard of in the industry, in my opinion. And I think that boils down to, 1, you're obviously educating your buyers really well ahead of time, but you're also, it sounds like, focusing on specific programs and hammering those programs home versus grabbing every load that anybody throws at you. So how do you vet
Right.
your programs? I see, I mean, it seems like you have like a core 5 or 6 programs that you're pushing. And then I'll see you post a different one here and there, but I see you posting a core, you know, few programs. How do you go about
Mhm.
vetting programs with your supplier without giving away anything pertinent, but like how do
Sure.
you go about saying, okay, I'm comfortable stamping my name on this as Smart Source Wholesale to where I know I won't get complaints from buyers?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. Is actually gonna That's kind of a cousin of something I was gonna bring up, a cousin topic, if you will.
Yeah.
But with the situation that um, we have in Texas, and now we started in Alabama, um, I wanted to position ourselves so that we had as much hands-on, and that's how we're doing the vetting. To answer your initial question here, is we're being as hands-on as possible so that essentially, um, when you look at it from a 360-degree view, it's here's what we can offer you. Like, you're literally looking at it on a video, like a Facebook or a WhatsApp or a FaceTime chat, or you're coming to the warehouse and you're looking at it. So literally, there's so little that can go wrong.
Yep.
Like, if I'm letting you touch it or you're seeing it and this is what you're getting, and
Yep.
here's the piece count, like, there's very few things that can
Nothing
go
you
wrong.
can do at
And
that point.
yeah, super, super low risk. And it's, again, that's, again, to say it for the 30th time, that's part of setting the expectation, but that's how we're doing the vetting. And the situation that we're in Texas, and now the situation that we're in Alabama, literally, these are relationships we developed. The Alabama one is newer, but the point is that we're working with the partnership that we have to say, you know what, we're going to bring the product in, and in Smart Source Wholesale, we're going to touch and breathe and smell everything that's going on here. We're
Yep.
going to do the sales, the marketing, the invoicing, whatever it is. We're going to bring the customers in. We're literally taking control and managing the situation with the partnership that we built in that warehouse. And that is how we're doing the vetting, because we're literally in the trenches. And
Yep.
we're not, I mean, like, whether someone wants to call you a broker or not, it becomes a relationship where now you're basically the marketing, selling, this is our product arm, instead of I'm just somebody selling something I've never seen before. So it's changing the game. And that's why we're having so few problems of things we're doing out of Texas and now out of Alabama, because we're in it and we're doing it. And here it is. You like it, great. If you don't like it, let's find something else. But there's no surprises. And that's what it's coming down to. No surprises. No surprises equals 100% setting the expectation.
Yeah.
If you don't sell the expectation, you're selling a problem. And that's it. Period.
Fair. I like it.
So
No, that's impressive.
yeah.
I like it's super when you can show someone, especially in liquidation, 'cause there's so many
Yeah.
unknown. When I can touch the product, I can feel it. There's no excuse now when I get it that I should have any complaints. And I think it's super important that people take the time out of their day when there's a seller like you
Mm.
that's offering to come, like, I will let you see it. It is on you now to take the time out of your day, fly to drive
Right.
at least the first time or 2 and go view
Sure.
it, touch it. Like, once you've developed the relationship, sure, avoid that, you don't have to go see the load every time, but
Right.
it's your business. Take the time out of your day to go invest in it and make sure what someone says is actually true. And you're going above and beyond with all of these programs to do that, which is super unique and rare for people. I mean, I want people to understand how unique that is on a broker standpoint, because most people don't have the ability to show you what they're selling. If I'm selling you a Target truck or an Amazon truck that I don't have on my floor, I've got to get
Sure.
permission from someone else to let you into their facility to do that. And that, one,
Right.
for most brokers, they don't want that because then they're separated from the deal and it makes people a little
Right.
nervous. Um, that's a huge opportunity that you're giving people that I don't think very many people in this industry are able to do or are even willing to do. So, you
Right.
know,
Well, and then that just comes back to, the whole Alabama situation, which is nearly identical to the Texas situations, that these are, you know, companies that have come to us and said, "Hey, we know you have a big buyer base. Let's work together. You
yep,
guys we'll give you all of our walk-ins. We'll give you all the call-ins. You can basically, let's do this together." It's not that they don't want to deal with customers. It's that they want to deal with the warehouse operations or, the behind the scenes stuff. And they're like, good, you want to deal with all the customers?
yep,
Manage them, send the invoices, do the sales, do the marketing, all that stuff. And then that's where the real synergy takes place because it's more of a relationship. It's not, I'm never flipping stuff blindly, ever, ever, ever. So, I mean, that's where the benefit comes in for sure.
yeah,
And it's not just, I mean, it benefits me to help the customer, but overall, it's benefiting the customer and even customers we've had sales with previously when I'm like, hey, why don't you come in? We got this now in Alabama, or we got this now in Texas. Like, come and check it out. And they're like, oh no, we trust you, Jason. We done this before. I'm like, no, like literally come and check it out. Like,
yeah.
I thought that I won't sell it to you, but like, just come check it out. Like, I don't care how much you trust me. Come look at
Yeah.
it.
No, I'm proud of what
So,
I'm selling, which is
yeah,
huge. I mean, there's so many again,
right.
hearing that, you don't hear it very often. At least, again, I think I come, from back before. I mean, before COVID was a whole different beast than it is today. I'm not used to hearing someone like genuinely want to show the product off. Like
Sure.
liquidation, I think we're seeing a little bit more, of this trend of transparency, but liquidation hasn't always been that way.
Oh, no.
Liquidation
Yeah, for
that
sure.
there's still a big portion of it that's not that way, where I don't want you to see what I'm selling you because the top looks really good and the bottom looks like shit. So it's unique and it's really cool. I think people should really take note of this, that you're willing, not even willing, you are encouraging people to come out to a facility that's not yours, obviously, that you're partnered with, which is really big because a lot of these contract holders, like you said, their skill set is processing, big
Mhm.
under to process all this freight and to process it in a way that's quality for buyers. So they've entrusted you, it sounds like, to go out and sell and represent their product in a way that's fair to them and to the buyer. So
Mhm.
you have no risk of them circumventing you and going around to these buyers, which it's huge that you've developed that relationship as well, because that's super important where you don't have to worry about your customers when they go to see these guys, them stealing your clients. They're too busy processing this freight and making sure that it's quality for your people. So
Oh yeah, no, it's a very tight knit relationship to where we're embedded together. It's almost like a marriage that we've created in these partnerships because it becomes a partnership to where we're helping each other. We're both creating a successful model to where we have a partnership with the warehouse, we have a partnership with the customer, respective and reciprocative of those. Everybody's getting a chunk of what they want. The product, the customer, the sales, and it's coming together, and you've created this, serendipitous, symmetry of the way that it's happening, and it works. So
that's great. I'm super pumped at what you're doing. I think the space really needs somebody like you in it. I think you're moving a lot of volume. I think you're doing it the right way, which is really incredible, and you're educating people along the way. So I think you should be really proud of that. Um, and I just keep hoping you keep selling and keep doing good.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I always want to just get it out there. I think it's important that conversations like these happen, just because there's a lot of miseducation, misunderstandings, podcasts like these and discussions like these that can really, you know, turn on light bulbs and create understanding. A lot of people don't have enough conversation. So it's
Yeah,
definitely important that situations like this happen. So I
100%.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well, we'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, brother. Thank you.